on with the show. This is it.
Get ready for truth and common sense. Join the Framers View on rumble.com to be part of the chat. Be sure to click join and follow to help keep the Framer on the air. Watch the replay on theframersview.com or rumble.com.
Today we've got, we've got a fun show today. I had so much stuff prepared for last week, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But we've got bills, we've got laws, we've got pushback, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about when I talk about that. But welcome to the Framers View. It is Monday, and 1 week from today, there's this guy that's going to be standing up on the steps way up high in Washington, D.C., and he's going to put his hand on the Bible and make a difference. Pretty simple. There's nothing to it. So thank you again. Thank you for being here. We have a lot to talk about, but Friday I wasn't here. I was planning on being here at my normal time, 1 o'clock Eastern time, 11 o'clock, where I happened to slither into my office. And guess what? Had a doctor's appointment, and nothing gets done quickly. It's the way it is. So anyway, here we are. Got some things from last week, got some things today. I've got things already stacked up for tomorrow. There's so much news. It's unbelievable. So anyway, so Trump is busy jacking with everybody's mind. It's really a fascinating education for people that don't get what Trump is all about. They just don't understand that he talks about weaving when he talks, when he speaks, when he does a speech, and he weaves in and out of things. He does that in life in general. And so anyway, he's doing that. We'll see what happens. I think I know what's going to happen, and we'll see what that turns out to be. But anyway, so if the story doesn't work for you, just lie. We're going to have a little story on that. Republicans seem to be getting focused on Trump getting the job done. I think they've finally realized, it's kind of like, a fighter. You think of Muhammad Ali, for those of you that's old enough to remember him, greatest fighter ever, heavyweight boxer. And, I'm sure getting into the ring with him, even if you were a great boxer, you had to be thinking, first of all, his arms are longer than most people's legs. He had a hand. I got an opportunity to actually spend some time with him many, many years ago when he was just starting to show his Parkinson's and things were going on. But, looking at this man's hands, looking at his, we kind of joked around a little bit sparring. And I was this far away from his face when he had his face planted in my face. But until you see that and you're in the middle of it, even if you're a great boxer, back when he was in his prime, man. And that's what Trump is. He's a fighter, and he's going to make a difference. So that's what we've got on that. Hey, Jake Sullivan, our security person, that spokesperson, boy, I'll tell you, his lies and his BS has gone over the top. We'll talk about that a little bit. Also, Ed Barkey, he's the guy that's in Maine, that they're all liberal that start with M, it seems like. But he's got some interesting thought. I guess we'll call it thought. Speaking of BS, Jack Smith has resigned. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And Title IX and a story about NATO, big time supporting Trump on something. That's interesting. And we've got some business to talk about too. But first, I put pushback in my title. And one of the things that is just fascinating that's going on, Chuck Schumer, you might know him. Chuck Schumer is basically just bad dude. He doesn't care what's right. He only wants it to be his way. And these Democrats are, you can be, I'm pretty confident that there will be very little, if any, vote for any Trump pick that's going to be talked to this week and next week. I just don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see. We'll find out what's going to happen. So before I go into the show, I didn't want to drag a whole bunch into this whole fire in California, but I've got to say a few things because they've started with this climate BS. It's a meaningless statement. It's a fundraiser. That's what it is. And what the real truth is about how to manage and how to prepare for fire, I hope you'll bear with me just for a few minutes for me to talk a little bit about it, because I happen to have a minute or two of experience in this. You know, being a retired firefighter, worked as a chief, worked my way up from being, a rookie come into academy, brutal experience, physical challenge. It's tough for anybody. I got a good pal that left our department, went to another department. We were volunteer. And there's, you can kind of say there's no difference between volunteer and paid. Yes and no. You're taught the same things, but the push is not as hard. And he was in his late 40s when he went into this fire department. Big, high call volume fire department. And it kicked his ass. And he is one of the most conditioned guys you'd ever imagine. And this wildland fire has many prongs in it in California. So let's just talk about this just for a minute so you understand. For my friends that live, from Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, Montana, and west. Because there's a difference between a grass fire, which we'll say is Texas, basically. I mean, they've got some hills, not mountains, and fire runs up hills because the heat's preheating all of the things that are going to burn. They burn fast. But all of this western United States, and for those people that live east that experience these fires, Florida fires, huge Florida fires, it is about what we call duff. Duff is that stuff that's underneath in the grass that's been limbs and needles and things that fall to the ground, and those get embedded underneath more of them every year. And you walk some places and it'll almost feel like you're on springs when you're walking. Well, that's all that duff. And when the fire gets into that duff, it burns for a long time. The stuff on top burns fast. So with that said, this is an example right now. This is an example in California of all of those things. But let's get straight. It isn't climate change that caused the fire to get out of control like it is. It's wind. And some people want to say, well, they just say it's just the wind. Well, it is the wind. There was a fire here in Colorado called the Marshall Fire. Took out 1,000 homes in a matter of hours. Just obliterated them. Just destroyed everything. We had crews up there. You couldn't put water on a house fast enough to save it. It was a horrific experience. And that's 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And guess what? There's hardly any homes built there yet. And that's a problem in California to a much larger extent because it's way more homes and properties. But this whole thing about them saying, well, it's Trump's fault and it's Newsom's fault. Oh, wait a minute. Some of it is. Some of it's the mayors. Some of it's the people that are in charge of their own homes. Mitigation is one thing that can help. Help. But more importantly, there's two things that make the biggest difference in the world. You might have heard of it. The first one is called water. And Gavin Newsom, if you saw the on my Rumble site, I've got a picture of Newsom there, and I said, dude, hair gel and you have to go. The reason I say that is there's no preparation. These guys that fight fires, I know what this is like. It is a massive job. The work that you put in every day, 12, 14 hours a day for 2 weeks, and then you have to stop and you have to walk away, and then you can come back later to do more 2-week stints. But the number of people that are required to do this and the physical exertion that's required that occurs on every person that's in that fire is such an enormous deal. And you have to have water, as I said, and you have to have fire breaks. Now, fire breaks, there's multiple types of fire breaks. There's the ones where you dig a line and you make it, this wide, maybe a little wider, and you hope that the fire will come up to that and it'll stop, or you can control it. You can burn back on the other side of it and it'll get controlled. That's an itty bitty fire. When you've got a big fire, now you got bulldozers and they cut out a swath. Well, the California people will never let you cut out a swath, right? It could save people's lives. But they didn't do that. So now we have people, I can't imagine how these people, Newsom's saying it'll be a year before they even get started. And, well, that's just nonsense. That's unacceptable. Let's just leave it at that. But the nonsense really is the year, and the fact that Newsom would even say that, to give no hope to these people that have lost their homes, to give no possibility of believing that you can survive this. And remember, that rubble that's on their property is their mortgage. How do they pay that? Their businesses and their jobs are probably gone if their homes are gone. And if they work remotely, there's no internet. What are you going to do with that? You can't do it all on your phone. That's a real problem. And you can only put so many people in a Starbucks that's left over where you can go in and use their internet, if they have any. And this just goes on and on and on. So as you watch these stories about California, God bless these 24 people that died. Some of them died because they didn't leave. There are no circumstances where not leaving is right. Just, there aren't any. But there's others that couldn't get out. Trees fell, blocked the road. There was no way to get out. 24 people already. We don't even know. Cadaver dogs are going to go in and start working and finding bodies after this is over. I pray it isn't a huge number, but it could be. And the firefighters, when this is over, we're talking about exhausted, completely exhausted people. That's what will happen for those folks. So now we go down to the next step and stopping the fires that are going on and hoping that the wind stops, slows down, and they can get their arms wrapped around this stuff. But there's new fires starting. So if you think you know about fire, you don't, unless you've been a fireman. And if you think you know fire because you're a fireman, not unless you've done wildland fire, because it's a whole different game. Whole different game. That's my sermon. It's not a sermon, but man, it just, there's no way to express the thought of disaster that I feel for these people. I cannot imagine how these people are going to make it. And what about the kids? What are they going to do about school? What happens to these kids? Learning remotely again? That turned out to be a disaster. Do they go someplace where the fires haven't been? And where would they live? And what money do they have to do that? To rent an apartment? They've lost their jobs in many cases. If they've got a remote job, okay, they can work. But if you've got a family of 6, what apartment do you go to? What do you do with your dogs? What about your horses? Nobody thinks about this stuff. It's scary. So I wanted to start this show with, I'd already started it, but getting into the meat is coming to you with some information about some renaming that Trump's going to do. He's going to rename things. And I think it's important we all know and understand what these things are and what he's going to call them and everything like that. So here's some things he's going to do. Number one, he's going to rename USB ports in the country will be named USA ports, only patriotic connections for electronic devices. I think that's a brilliant idea. The Statue of Liberty will now be Lady Melania. Perfect. French fries will now be known as Florida fries. South America will now be known as Worse America. New Mexico will be required to call itself West Texas. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think it's totally brilliant idea. Well, here's some more of them. Yeah. So now we're going to call Greenland America Land. That's so much better. Georgia will be required to rename itself South Carolina. The first country that agrees to rename itself Trumpstian gets free NATO membership. Any nation should see this as a value. China will now be spelled China. However he says it. He says it in a way I can't even pronounce, but and Tex-Mex cuisine will now be simply Tex-Tex. Nachos are American now, folks. That's what we're going to do. We're going to rename. Trump's got a plan. He's got a big plan. He's got a plan that's bigger deal than anybody could possibly imagine. So here we go. 1 week from today. By the way, next week, the actual swearing in starts somewhere around 10 o'clock my time, noon East Coast. And I'm going to try to capture some things that happen and put them together real quick so I can share it with you during my show at 1 o'clock Eastern time, when it'll be over and you might have missed it because you've got work, you've got jobs to do, and you might want to see some of these things. So I will be covering that for you to be able to see. So back to the fire for just a moment. And people who just don't get it. If you don't know who Stephanie Ruhle is, she works for MSNBC. She's one of the people that had her pay cut in half because their audience is about the size of people that would fit in my studio. And so they've come to a point where they figured, well, we got to do something here, and they're taking it to the next step. So here's the deal. Stephanie Ruhle is talking to a guy that had his house in a fire. Watch this. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Wild conspiracy theories are spreading all over the internet at a time when people desperately need good factual information. What's driving this? Politics?
Well, politics is part of it. Part of it is human nature. We look at a vast catastrophe like wildfires, like 9/11, like JFK, and we're looking for answers. We're looking for who really did it and who is to blame for it. The wind did this. It's foolish to be angry at the wind, but it's very profitable to tell people that it was DEI or Antifa arsonists or the endangered smelt or Gavin Newsom who did it to them. It drives commerce, it drives virality and clicks, and unfortunately, we live in an attention economy where social media and politics drive the way we look at the world and the way that we look at reality.
Is that why we're seeing the likes of a Donald Trump and Elon Musk? I mean, Trump is claiming that there is no money for FEMA aid in these fires. He made the exact same claim a few months ago when North Carolina was hit by the hurricane, and that was huge. Those lies were hugely damaging. Are you worried that it's happening again and the innocent people it could hurt? Because, yeah, in general, he likes to get people fired up. It helps with popularity. It helps with clicks. But these are people's lives.
Well, I know it's happening again. I know that the rumors of FEMA abandoning people, of firefighters abandoning people, of refusing to do their jobs, of unquote.
Ladies and germs, I really don't know how in the world these things continue, how they manage to be in a place where they think this way. The fact that the smelt, where he blew off the smelt, the fish, that was water that's not going to California. It's going to save the smelt. Okay, it's great to save smelt, but how about saving people? How about saving their homes? How about giving them an opportunity to live their life like they were before these fires started? And California is on fire 12 months out of the year. Nobody doubts that. That's the way that is. But the point here is this. While all of that can be said, there's smaller fires. CAL FIRE is able to keep up with it, and the local fire departments. The wind event, you get these winds coming in, and there's almost nothing you can do unless you have fire breaks. That gives you an opportunity to try to get control of it. But when you get into the hills, and they talk about 14, 15,000 acres. Colorado, we've had fires that were 150, 200,000 acres. Just huge fires. But there's no homes. Not that that's okay, but these are it's so compact there. There's so many homes in these small areas, and it's just chewing them up. The fire is just chewing them up. Okay, I promise I won't talk anymore about that, unless I do. There's a possibility that I will. So I want to get to the next step of this game. It called the President of the United States and his choices, the people that he wants to become his secretaries and his ambassadors and all the people that will be coming into office. By the way, on the back here behind me, you might see, I don't have the whole picture. It just struck me. This picture here, that's a picture of Notre Dame, and Lou Holtz is in it. I can't move my camera while I'm doing the show, but they're playing in the national championship. I just thought I'd mention that. Notre Dame, my guys, they're national play in Ohio. And isn't it interesting that great SEC football, college football, no SEC playing in the championships? Wow. Ohio State against Notre Dame. That will be a barn burner. That will be a barn burner. Speaking of barn burning, and I told you I won't get into fires. Here's the deal. They're today starting to interview some of the main characters that are going to be, as an example, Pete Hegseth, kind of an important position. Secretary of Defense, Department of Defense, big deal. And we know there's pushback, and that's one of the things I talked about for today. But watch this. We'll talk about it on the other side.
I talked to a senator this morning that seems to think that hires first and bring the Department of Defense out of this woke ideology that's been infested into the Department of Justice under the Biden administration. I talked to a senator this morning that seems to think that Hegseth is well on his way to getting confirmed along with Tulsi and Cash. And the bottom line is President Trump won overwhelmingly, won the swing states. We have to put his people in, and the Republican senators need to respect that. And I think they're going to move forward, and we can get the America First agenda through. And one of the first places that we have to do that is in the Department of Defense. So I'm very happy to hear that Joni and other senators are obviously warming to Pete Hegseth's nomination. I think Trump's got to get all of these people in right away. The Senate's got to move into confirmation hearings right away.
That's so true. So whether you like it or not, and all Democrats are going to be against it. Everything, no matter who the person is, because they have to. Kind of simple, they have to, because that's who they are. You can't work with anybody except for Democrats. And Chuck Schumer pretty much said that. But watch Ron Johnson talking about Pete Hegseth.
I'm really not expecting any help from Democrats. I wish we were going to get some, but I doubt it. I'll be satisfied if they don't obstruct our process of moving forward and confirming these people. I think President Trump won a very convincing victory. He ran on some very strong promises. The American people say they want a secure border. They want safety for their children. So that's what we need to deliver on. And in order for President Trump to do that, he needs people in place in his administration to really make good on those promises.
Do the reports that we talked about earlier about the confirmation process possibly being slowed down due to delayed background checks and paperwork issues, does that concern you? I mean, what if I'm hoping that it's not the government or the Biden administration that's slowing things down.
I'm hoping the FBI has pulled their agents in Washington, D.C., investigating grandmas that just showed up on January 6th in Washington, D.C., and started devoting their massive manpower resources to doing these background checks. They're not that complex. You talk to a bunch of people. This is pretty run-of-the-mill type investigations. I think the people that President Trump has nominated have pretty clean slates, so that should not be a hang-up.
Now, here's the thing. Yeah, it shouldn't be slowing anything down. But the Democrat, it's amazing to me. These are just human beings that are Democrats. These are people that walk the streets like we do, that go shopping like we do, that, do normal life things, that have such a built-in hate for anything that is being done by Republicans, that's part of Trump, And they ignore the fact of 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago when he was doing it, 8 years ago when he came into office and carried out his job with everything you could possibly imagine against him. The press, the Democrats, Liz Cheney, all of the jackasses that were going after him, all of these people that were going after this guy, and guess what? He still basically said, hey, look, I'm doing my job. I'm ignoring you. I don't care. That's what it really is all about. I mean, he's the most resilient guy I've ever seen. Nothing stops him. So, this is a continuation of Ron Johnson talking about the DNC trying to slow it down.
I'm really not expecting any help from Democrats. I wish we were going to get some, but I doubt it. I'll be satisfied if they don't obstruct our process of moving forward and confirming these people. I think President Trump won a very convincing victory. He ran on some very strong promises. The American people say they want a secure border. They want safety for their children. And so that's what we need to deliver on. And in order for President Trump to do that, he needs the people in place in his administration to really make good on those promises.
Do the reports that we talked about earlier about the confirmation process possibly being slowed down due to delayed background checks and paperwork issues, does that concern you? I mean, what if I'm hoping that it's not the government.
That's kind of a repeat of what he had done, but I wanted to just put that first part in there. It's it's not necessary to do what they're doing. You take a look at the history of how the Democrats and Republicans worked together when the picks that were done by the new president, and for all intents and purposes, there was a large number of the opposition side that voted for these candidates. They're going to get in anyway, because by the time they go into the hearings, they've pretty well been vetted. And since we have the authority to do this with a majority in the Senate, they're going to be approved, unless, of course, Republicans leave us like they do sometimes. I'm not holding my breath in some of these cases. I don't know. So, with that said, there's a couple of things that I worry about, even though it's only a week left, of how stupid, how dangerous, and how misinformed people are. And when I say misinformed people, I'm talking about the people that only watch CNN, MSNBC, and a few of the other liberal places, because they never tell the story, or they tell a story, not the story. So Jake Tapper, who's with CNN, was interviewing Jake Sullivan, and he's talking about the accomplishments and how successful the Biden administration has been. This is called gaslighting, okay? If you ever wondered what gaslighting is, this is gaslighting. Watch this.
As we come to the waning days of the Biden administration, where across the globe could you point and say the United States is safer because of what we did
I'd start
here?
by saying our alliances are stronger than we found them 4 years ago. They're stronger than they've been in decades. NATO is more powerful, purposeful, and bigger. Our alliances in the Asia Pacific are at all-time highs. And our adversaries and competitors are weaker across the board. Russia's weaker, Iran's weaker, China is weaker. And all the while, we kept America out of war. So I think the American people are safer, and the country is better off than we were 4 years ago. And we're handing all that off to the next team, as well as having the engines of American power humming. Our economy, our technology, our defense industrial base, our supply chains. So the United States is in a stronger, more secure position than our competitors and adversaries.
Well, Nancy, I think that man just lied to us. Iran is weaker. Russia is weaker. China is weaker. What in the world? Well, he isn't thinking. I was going to say, what is he thinking? The answer is, he's not. He's lying. He's telling a story so that he can walk away from here, from his office, when it's over, and it'll be over at noon on January 20th. And when he's out of there, guess what? He'll be able to say, well, we were successful. We did this and we did that and we made this happen and we made these countries weaker and we made NATO stronger, and it's all BS. Why would Jake Tapper let him keep saying those things? You know, that's why I could never be on network TV, because I would rip their heads off. Explain to me how Iran is weaker. Go ahead. Waiting. Well, they're because no, that's not true. I mean, that's the way it would work. Whatever he says, I'd have to point out that he's lying. He was lying in that video. It just ain't true. I say ain't for those that are not going to get to go to school anymore. They can use the word ain't. It's okay. But it isn't true. And Jake Sullivan has been lying to us for 4 years. He tells a story, not the story. He pushes his agenda, not the agenda for America. He pushes what Biden wants, and he pushes it all the time. Every time he gets in front of a camera, he says stuff that is just lying. And I can't imagine how you go home at night and look at your family that has probably seen you say these things on TV and try to explain to your kids how you're lying to them, although they've been gaslighted at home. But I'll bet the wife knows, unless she's a complete idiot too. Wait a minute, she'd have to be. She's married to him. I don't know. That's the way I look at it. And it isn't really a case of what Sullivan says, while it is important what he says. It's important that the people that don't see anything but what he said will be, well, Trump won't be able to keep that safe and secure. And for him to say we weren't in any wars, no, we didn't have any troops there that we know of. But we supported the war in Israel, which we needed to do. And why did that happen? We supported Ukraine, both of them massive billions of dollars, but we gave billions of dollars to Iran so we could keep it going. But all of that happens, all of that support that comes from us, we're involved in it. Those wars didn't have to happen. If Trump would have been in office in 2020, just like he was in 2016, when he came into office, actually January of 17 and 21, he would have eliminated that possibility. Because those wars started after Joe Biden came into office. Certainly the Israeli war. It wouldn't have happened because they know Trump is going to do something. He said you're going to have hell to pay if you don't have these hostages back by next Monday. Before next Monday, I think is what he said. Well, what's going to happen? They think he's bluffing. I don't think if I were on that side, I'd want to be thinking they're bluffing. Because that administration, being the Trump administration and his military and his technology and his ideas and his plans, are nothing that they would understand. He's too smart for that. So I don't know what's going to happen either. But if those hostages are not back and the poor souls that have died during this ridiculous situation in Israel and with Hamas in Gaza, it's going to be like when Reagan took over and Iran released the prisoners. The hostages. I think. We'll see. We'll find out what happens. It would be interesting if they're not released when he gets done with his oath, if there's a loud noise in the Gaza Strip. I don't know. It could happen. I would be suggesting that Palestinian people get the hell out. If you're not supporting Hamas, get out. That's what I would say. And I think a lot of people would agree. So, that's Trump coming in, but Jake Sullivan trying to save his bacon for when he leaves and claim all of the success is because of the information he's given to America so that he has a job. I mean, that's really what it is. There's another side of it, and that is a more gaslighting, but in a different way. Ed Markey. If you know who Ed Markey is, or if you don't, he's a politician in the great state of Maine. And he says the most ridiculous things sometimes. You know, some of the articles he writes, some of the things that he says. But take a look at this. So, Dem Senator warns LA fires are a preview of coming atrocities, claims Trump bought off by big oil. Senator Markey claimed in a post on X the catastrophe is a climate emergency, looks like he took aim at President-elect Trump, asserting the incoming president has been bought off by the oil industry. Yeah, that's what he says. It's been bought off by the oil industry. Well, let's let's see what that means. Trump has been bought out for $1 billion by big oil just to pay off to kill the IRA and the new Green Deal, Green New Deal. We know what will happen. More fires, more climate disasters, more death. The LA fires are a preview of coming atrocities, Markey said. Well, what? Where does he come up? I mean, what kind of mushrooms is he getting? I don't think even you can find those around where I am. He suggested rising use of AI could result in doubling data center electricity demand by 2026. Now, I will tell you this, that could happen because it uses a massive amount of electricity. Increased carbon emissions, water supply shortages. What? Wait a minute, we already have them, you jackass. And electronic waste. Well, okay, electronic waste. Those would be batteries that come out of cars that are electric cars, the biggest influence of that. Water supply shortages, things like what Newsom has done, diverting water to save the smelt. And carbon emissions, here's a little piece you might want to know about. The carbon emissions that's happening from these wildland fires in California put off more carbon emission than something like 10 years of carbon emissions. Maybe they ought to be focusing on stopping the fires. We're already facing a climate crisis. We can't let AI make it worse. This guy, I mean, if you can't win, just go ahead and just throw fear into it. Make it sound like the world is going to come to an end. Of course, they'll get quieter and quieter and quieter as the 4 years go on. After the second year, after we hopefully keep the House and the Senate, after Congress is still solidly moving forward, they'll shut up. And the reason they'll shut up is because what Trump will be doing will be making things better, and they won't be able to say that. Well, they will, because they can just lie. But that's what we're looking at. The lies and all of the misinformation. And I hate it because Democrats say misinformation and disinformation all the time. But what is really happening and these lies and missed untruths are going on by the Dems. You know, this water situation. And by the way, if the fire department doesn't know in California that there's no water, I would be asking a chief, how would you not know that? How would it be that you don't know the hydrants are empty with the number of fires and the number of tests that are done, and the water department should be in communication with you? Why wouldn't they be? You use more water than anybody in a very short period of time. Even on a car fire. God save you if it's an electric car. And they don't know? They didn't know the hydrants were empty? They're dry? Come on. Come on, man. I mean, it's crazy. So the head liar in chief, the head troublemaker in chief, the head, I've got the job, but I was never authorized to have that job, is my buddy Jack Smith. Yes, the guy that tried to destroy Donald Trump and did a pretty good job at making it look like he was going to get the job done and thought he could keep Trump from getting in office. That's what he thought. He had money on it, I guarantee you. But here we are, right now, today. Look at the story about Jack Smith.
Well, there's some breaking news out of Washington. Special counsel Jack Smith, he's resigned from the Justice Department. That resignation effective yesterday. Smith announced his exit in a court filing that was made public today. But you know, the move is not a surprise. Smith was expected to leave the department by January 20th when President-elect Trump takes office. It is, though, still unclear at this hour when the first volume of Smith.
So Jack Smith's gone. Let me fill in the blank just a little bit here. Number one, Jack Smith was appointed by Merrick Garland. You cannot be a special counsel and do that job without having approval from Congress. They have to go through a vetting process to have that position to be able to do those kind of lawfare situations in the case of Jack Smith. So he didn't even have authority to do what he did. That's one of the reasons that Cannon, who's the judge down in Florida, has said, no, we're not continuing with this. Because he doesn't have standing. He doesn't have authority to do this case. And everybody knows, we know Mershon and Jack Smith were doing these cases, all of these cases, and Letitia James. All of these things were being done to keep Trump from getting elected and to punish him. That's all it was. And will he end up getting all of these things pulled off and stopped and turned around? Most likely. You know, you watch any of these, even Democrat lawyers say that these cases had just nothing in them. But the press kept carrying it. They kept showing it, kept doing everything they could to keep it alive. And that's where we are today. Whew. Man, craziness. So, I wanted to put some things that are good into the show. And you know that I'm a big supporter of women's sports. You know, I haven't been a big fan of women's sports, and I admit it. I never watched a women's basketball game. You know, I don't watch those. But, you know, not watching them and not caring about what's happening to women are two totally different things. And honestly, I've watched some of these women basketball in the women's NBA, and guess what? They've come a long way, baby. A long way. But to have men in the bathrooms, to have them in the locker rooms, to have them going into the showers when you're going into a shower, if my daughter was being exposed to that, I would lose my mind. But guess what? Title IX just got a lifesaver thrown at it. Take a look at this. Judge overturns Biden admin's Title IX revisions protecting female spaces and sports. After the Biden administration attempted to redefine sex in Title IX as gender identity, a federal judge in Kentucky shot down the shift nationwide. The case of Cardona versus Tennessee was decided on Thursday by the U.S. District Court, Eastern District of Kentucky, Northern Division. But this is a decision for the nation. So, to continue on this, after concluding that the 1,500-page regulation was fatally polluted by legal laws, the U.S. District Judge Danny C. Reeves struck it down. Yahoo! Now, for those of you that don't care about this, you should. For you, those of you who don't understand what this is about, it's important to get this. Title IX was specifically designed to make an inequality for women, to be able to support and protect women in sports, to uplift women in sports. When you're in grade school or high school and you want to play volleyball, you want to play softball, you know, those were things that girls didn't get to do. And Title IX was a big help with that, more so with the collegiate level, But high school and graduate and grade school, definitely two also for them. But, you know, Biden wanted to turn it around and make it identity and let men be in bathrooms and locker rooms and let men destroy women. If you've watched some of the videos I've shown you and other ones that I didn't even put on, there was a video I saw of a volleyball game where this guy spiked a ball in volleyball and hit this girl in the face. And I mean, blood just exploded out of her nose. Broke her nose, probably. Could it happen if a woman did that? Sure. But probably not at the velocity that a guy could do. And by the way, the guy's a loser anyway. I would never consider playing against a woman to beat her, knowing that it's, you know, I'm stronger, faster, more capable. But these guys that are doing this, they're ranked like 300, 400, 600 position in men's sports. And then they go there because they think they can win, and they do. But they hurt the women, and they hurt their scholarships, and they hurt a lot of things. I won't preach on that anymore, but this is just a big piece of the puzzle. So NATO, buddies at NATO, have supported Donald Trump on something. Look at this. Former NATO commander Stardust, I think it's Stardust is the way he pronounces it. I don't know why, but that's the way, Starvidus, something like that. Adding Greenland, not a crazy idea. So President-elect Donald Trump has said the importance of Greenland to national global security. Former NATO Supreme Court ally commander, he agreed to this, or agreed with this. He said, yeah, that makes sense. Skeptical Democrats, cynical pundits, and liberal media laughed off Trump's suggestions of making the country an official U.S. territory. It's not a crazy idea, he said. This is coming from NATO. NATO. We could do an awful lot in terms of business, investment, box out the Russians, box out the Chinese, and work very closely with Greenland. The former NATO commander called the large Arctic island a strategic gold mine for the United States. Now, let's talk about what gold mine means. Gold mine means security and safety for the United States. And I always have to feel like I have to make this really clear what I'm talking about. If you take a look at the globe, there's a globe you can get. Just in case you wonder, go to Walmart, pick up a globe, spin it around and see what's going on. Okay? So there's this Arctic Strait that comes down and the ice is melting. So, which happens, over the thousands of years, things have frozen and things have thawed. We're in thawing mode. That's the way it's not about human-caused climate change. It's what happens. Well, I won't get into that any further. But the problem is Russia and China can come in through those openings and get into Greenland, and they can also take over that country and take over those ports, and we use that as much as, well, maybe not as much, but a lot, similar to what it is at Panama Canal, which is another thing we gave away for $1 that we built. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. I know he's passed away and we're supposed to respect him. I don't have to respect him. I respect the fact that he gave a lot after the presidency, but he was out of his realm as President of the United States. But this whole thing with this whole Greenland and the ports and what we have to protect for national security, for Canada, for America, for the Americas, they could access us. China could come in from the northeast and come in from the southwest and surround us. I don't know. You like that idea? Probably a good idea, isn't it? Yeah, let's just do that. Man. I don't know why people get so crazy about these things. And I know Greenland doesn't want to sell and everything. And what Trump is probably doing is giving him the worst case scenario, and he'll negotiate something where they have military people on Greenland. The Greenland people talk about how they are like second-class citizens. And they kind of want America to come in as a territory, probably. So Joe Biden is doing pardons, and everybody's upset about it. And you know what? Every president always has done pardons. And Trump's going to do pardons, but he's going to do some of them right at the beginning. We've talked about this, and people are having a coronary over that. But watch what JD said on Sunday morning with Fox News. Watch this.
January 6th pardons, President Trump says there's a process. Where is the line drawn on who will and wouldn't be considered for pardon?
I think it's very simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there, but we're very much committed to seeing the equal administration of law. And there are a lot of people
Yeah. I mean, there's people, again, people that are there that still have not been tried. They've been held all these years. Well, that's against the Constitution. Oh, wait a minute. I've got one of those. So do you. You just don't have it in your house, maybe. It's like a Bible. Should have it. You know? Rocky Raccoon, all he found when he went into the hotel was a Bible. Sorry, music just comes to me. But that is something, excuse me, that we need to rectify. Now, there's people that were violent, as he said, that should not get out, and they're not going to get out. That's the difference between Trump and Biden. Biden took off the 34 people that are on death row of 37. And he's taken them off death row. Why? Just because they're rehabilitated? Well, then let's let them out completely, right? Does that make your milk curdle thinking about that? I hope it does. So I want to talk a little business here. This is important stuff, and you need to understand these things. Take a look at It's about the employment of people. It's lives, careers, opportunity that's taken away. Now, maybe they didn't do right adjustments because all of these companies have been affected by, guess what? Online. They have to figure something out. You still want to have stores. I love to go in to a Home Depot or go into other stores and be able to look at stuff when I'm buying. You know, it's hard sometimes to know. If you want to buy lumber, buying it online, at least you can go there and pick it up. And you can look at the lumber and go, no, this is bad. And you go and pick your own. You know, go through it, find the stuff that works for you. You can't do that online. So, I don't know. So if I can't have my way, I'm taking my ball and going home. That's what's happening with TikTok. Look at this. Aspects, but we can't have a theft, if you will, of America's just everything and steal data from data centers and all that type of thing with a Chinese company in our pocket. We can't have that happen. Can't happen. That's the show for today, man. It went fast. I had so much that I wanted to cover today, and I think I got it all as I look up at my screen above. Looks like I covered it all. So I'm going to be back here tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We're going to do this thing all over again because it's important that I keep bringing you documents and information that's important to you. So until then, and until you get an opportunity to see me again tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern, carry on.
Thanks for your support. Join the Framers View Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.